So we have next up on our stage to talk about media technology and society. And after he is done presenting, we will jump into sustainable technologies equals sustainable life. So please pay attention. Thank you very much. We welcome Max Beverton-Palmer to the stage.
That's good. Hi, everybody. Delighted to be here this afternoon. So my purpose today is to talk to you a bit more about a positive vision of the future. So I'm going to take what happened in the last presentation about responsibility and then talk about my experiences and how there's some practical steps we can all do as individuals in a technology and media world to make a difference. So you'll hear a lot of despair at the moment about populism and the state of politics, and you often hear a lot of despair about social media, probably about Twitter and about discourse in public society. And I could come here as somebody from Britain and talk to you about Brexit for many, many hours, but that would be very boring for you, and I'd probably have to leave the stage in tears because of the desperation of our situation. But what I want to do is to actually make the case to you all about why we should still care about what technology and media does in the world, and the way we can use kind of technology design principles to make a better society. So my view is that technology has democratized responsibility, and it's changed radically how we should think about our notions of responsibility and ethics. And if we're going to think about those notions of responsibility, we need to found them in something. And I really believe that we need to found them in diversity, inclusion, and listening primarily to others' experiences. So I am head of tech and society in a new team set up at the Tony Blair Institute in London. So we're a global organization, and our team's purpose is to create a positive vision of the transformative power of technology. The Institute is a very resolutely centre-ground organization with a global focus. We believe that in order to counter the forces of populism, you have to give people, so citizens and voters, a new vision of radical change. You need to build a picture of what society could look like and the transformative policies that can make a difference to people's lives. And we believe technology is at the center of that. So this is our mission statement. So we believe what we're doing is to equip the world's leaders to master the revolution in technology so they can access its benefits, but also to mitigate its risks. So we're building a policy program to do that, and we're a very, very new team, so we're looking for ideas, and we're kind of keen to have lots of conversations around the world about exactly how you go about doing that. And at a technology conference, I don't need to tell you about the wonders of modern technology and its transformative power. But there are two sides to every coin. So facial recognition, for example, it can have a real transformative effect on crime fighting and policing and safety. But of course, it can lead to a massive invasion of privacy. Social media has given us the alt-right in the US and the spread of violent far-right extremism, but it's also given voice to a culture that might have never found its feet. So one of the Oscar favorites for next year is likely to be a small Korean film about social class called Parasite. And I found out about this the other day. Really interesting film. And it's gaining a loyal fan base in the US around the world already, despite only just being released. It's not even being released in the UK, at least, until February. And it's already making millions at the US box office. And it's partly down to this meme, which is called the Jessica jingle, where she explains about how to ring a doorbell, basically. And people are sharing it. That's just an amazing example about how the cultural world is being expanded by social media. But too often we're forced to decide between two visions of society and technology, either a kind of libertarianism of the West Coast California, where information should be set free, or a more techno-authoritarianism of restrictive states. That polarization does us no favors and leads to a bit of lazy thinking in the tech policy world. For example, you either do nothing, just leave it as it is, or you ban, block, restrict if you're a politician. Our job, as I said before, is to give politicians those tools to think about actually how you introduce policy that makes sense for society and technology. So we connect those change makers, you guys in this room, technology professionals, media professionals, with those policy professionals. So we're basing our analysis on these three ideas as well. So technology is disruptive. The pace of it forces us to rethink what we take for granted and take new approaches. The pace of technology change is accelerating, and it's often unpredictable. And then technology, importantly, changes power structures, and it can concentrate power, but it can also democratize it. To respond to these challenges, what I believe is that we need a new social contract where we articulate better the shared responsibility of everybody in our society. That means if you're a citizen on Twitter, a startup building a new app, or a multinational big tech company or government. For us, and this is very important, then policy, legislation, and international agreements are really necessary to tie these responsibilities together to create the right incentives. So what do I mean by responsibility and how individuals can make a difference? We often talk about these complex problems, and they can often feel really overwhelming and insurmountable. Things like fake news, for example. We often think of fixing things as if we could flick a switch and solve all the ills on the internet overnight. I think Marek from Google did a great job in the previous presentation talking about the various tools and small little changes in education that can be built to help embed that responsibility. And I think we more need to collectively think in the media, tech, and society world about how we can make things all a little less worse. But the great thing is that we live in a world where individuals can have a great impact. And really, we are all technology designers. We are all media designers. We all can tweet. We can all put Facebook posts up. We can all put Instagram posts up. We also all have jobs that probably revolve around technology in some form or another. We all make decisions about how technology is used and how it's going to be used in the future, and especially in this audience. Rather than seeing social media as an inherent evil, for example, we need to reframe and think that maybe governments and citizens haven't caught up with the technology yet. It's everybody's responsibility to make a difference, and as I said at the beginning, one practical step and one foundation stone when thinking about making a difference should be diversity and inclusion. So I want to take you through some practical examples of what taking more responsibility means in business and media. So this is a few Instagram posts from Primavera Sound Festival in Barcelona back in June. And like Digital Freedom Festival, they had a commitment to equal lineup of artists or speakers. So there were an equal number of men on the bill as there were women on the bill. And that I think is an amazing thing. It's an amazing thing because it's so important to listen to a diversity of voices and a range of voices, as well as kind of thinking about broad principles of fairness. So the event hit the headlines because of that gender equal lineup, and actually there were loads of naysayers, as you'd expect, about whether you can actually fill a bill full of music like that. But actually it was the most successful festival in their history, with tickets selling out for the first time, with Rosalia singing on the Saturday night as the biggest artist of the whole festival. But that's not the only thing they did, and probably not necessarily the most important thing they did. They embedded a principle of equality in every aspect of the festival. All the bar staff were trained to deal with sexual assault and aggressive behaviour, and signs were posted across the site about what to do to stay safe and look out for others. The tagline for the festival, as you can see here, is that nobody is normal. Using principles like the UN Sustainable Development Goals, the festival organisers listened to the experiences of women and people of different sexualities and gender identities and were very, very explicit in their support. They also made sure that everyone else listened, and that's really crucial, and were confronted with the idea of a shared responsibility for a safe and inclusive environment. But what does that mean practically in technology design? Well, before I joined the Tony Blair Institute, I worked for Europe's largest broadcaster, Sky Television, for 5 years as head of digital policy. So personally, I really care about doing the right thing and ethical, responsible behavior. But I also have to recognize where I come from, that I'm a cis white man. So one, it's not for me to own that agenda, but two, it tells me that it's really important that I listen to others' experiences and find the gaps in my knowledge. I strongly believe that as a starting principle, if you really want to address some of the worst problems online. In media technology, you need diversity and inclusion. For example, technology design is not neutral. Media and cultural production is not neutral. If it's made for a neutral audience or average customer, we need to question who that neutral person is. Historically, they've probably been white, straight, and male. Diversity inclusion is important for all of us and raises all standards. One of my friends who works for a mental health charity told this great analogy that if you build a ramp in the road to help people with wheelchairs, then it also helps a kind of new mother with a pram or anybody with a pram. Also helps somebody who might have hurt their leg that day who needs a little help getting up onto the curb. And we need to think about technology and media in the same way. And to tie that together, that's why diverse teams are incredibly important to improving both the quality of products, services, and content, as well as looking after the interests of people who've traditionally been excluded. So it's up to all of us to listen to the experiences of others who might be excluded, include them and their views in whatever they're doing. So we faced this at Sky when we were building a new parental controls app called Broadband Buddy. So parental controls, as you know, will provide ability for parents to restrict when and how their children use the internet. And we built this amazing new app which was kind of great for parents in giving them absolutely more control over what their kids do. And all the consumer research we did before, when we asked parents, what do you want? They want, yeah, more control. Give us more ability to see what our kids are doing and more controls. But children have rights too, and the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child sets out the various protections that children should have from things like abuse and privacy. So my experience means that I know that LGBT sites, for example, are disproportionately blocked by parental controls and often wrongly categorized as pornography when they have no explicit sexual content. But this can deprive LGBT teens who are exploring their sexuality and gender identity of vital information. It's also something that people without those experiences might not know because they would never go to those websites. But more importantly, what that experience, my own experience, told me was that I probably was missing other perspectives, and a lot of other perspectives. And it was a chance conversation I had with a domestic violence charity in the UK that made a real difference to the Broadband Buddy product. Refuge, a UK charity, told me that about 1 in 4 women experience domestic violence in their lifetime in Britain. And in Latvia, it's about 1 in 3, so similar statistics around the world. I don't know about you, but that is astonishingly high. And I also learned actually that the perpetrators are increasingly using technology to facilitate their abuse, including tracking and controlling internet access. And then the unfortunate conclusion for all of us in this room or anybody building media and technology services is that your customers will either very likely be victims or engaged in domestic violence. It's pretty much guaranteed, so there's no point ignoring it or putting it under the carpet. For Sky's parental controls product, this meant, unfortunately, that the product could have been used by somebody to control their partner or child. Sky, as a technology company, as a media company, can't solve that social problem. It's a much broader thing, but it can take its own steps to make sure it doesn't make things worse. So our tech solutions to make sure there were what I termed escape routes for people in those situations. So for example, in an offline world in the UK, if you ring Childline, the UK child protection charity, as a child, that call will never appear on your mobile phone or telephone bill, so it can't be tracked. So in Broadband Buddy, Sky created the digital equivalent. So there are a number of websites and national helplines related to child safety, rape, domestic abuse, LGBT advice that will never be tracked in that parental controls app and can never be blocked. For example, if a child wants to access LGBT advice or Childline in the middle of the night, they can, even if their internet access has been turned off in the app. So what are the broader lessons for this experience? Well, we often, in the media policy world, talk about AI. We talk about ethics and ethical policies of AI. And it's very tempting to then go ahead and kind of sit in a dark room and write out in very detail an ethical framework about technology or media. But I guess my key advice is start a bit more simply and start with the principle that you should ask questions about experiences that you don't have. and look very specifically at a few vulnerable groups and their experiences to get product teams and media teams to ask those questions. And simply asking those questions is a very important step in creating a more ethically responsible world. Instead of, for example, trying to answer what the concept of fairness might mean, for example, and then write it in a 30-page handbook to give to designers, prompt the designers with cards, for example, to ask those questions about groups they might know. And this applies to AI and machine learning, by the way. So an AI expert said an AI system has two major sources of knowledge. One, data, and two, prior knowledge encoded by the engineering team. So it's humans all the way down. It's human decision-making that's involved in all of these things. And that's why diversity and inclusion is even more important than it's ever been in the past. So this is a very effective analogy for what I'm talking about. Think about data as diversity of teams, and secondly, the prior knowledge encoded by the engineers as the lived experiences that are listened to and included. So June Sarpong has who's in the UK has a great book called Diversify, which has some useful ways we can think about being more inclusive. And I would directly apply these to technology and media design. Responsibility and ethics should be everybody's responsibility. It's not just for an ethical responsibility team. The internet and digital technology has completely democratized the way our ability to change the world and do things, and therefore it comes with extra responsibility. So to come back to my original idea of a new social contract that's required around technology and society, one aspect of that new social contract of responsibility should be to check your own privilege and to understand the impact of your own actions. In a globalized world, everyone has the potential to do good and to do harm. But I'm thinking about marginalized people and specifically groups for these groups, for example, might help kind of come up with more innovative solutions to tackle some of the problems. It's not the whole answer. There's a shared responsibility, but I think it's a foundation stone for what can make a difference. So, thank you very much for listening to me. The Institute really has a global focus. Read more of our work here. We're kind of getting going, doing a big piece of work on crime and technology, crime fighting. Next year, we'll be kicking off a big piece of work on the future of news and technology, really using the kind of power that Tony Blair has as a convener and expertise from different people who've come from kind of Sky, from Google, from governments around the world to really build a kind of radical and sensible vision about the transformative power of technology and how that can make a difference in all of our lives. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Max. Thank you so much. That was an interesting conversation. We're going to have a panel discussion where Max will also be there. But before we have this discussion, Max, I want you to help me with this question. Why did you decide to tackle such a broad topic? I mean, how did you get into this industry about media and tackling such a broad topic like this?
So I started off my career as about 11 years ago at the media regulator in the UK. So I was in the kind of government side and regulation. Then I moved to Sky, so the business side. And I found that actually, so I was doing kind of government communications, which also means a bit of lobbying as well. Mm-hmm. And lobbying is often seen as the kind of bit of a dirty word, that you're nefariously influencing things. But I actually found that it was a great link back into a business to find out what was going on in the outside world and to try and make the business better. It was the connective tissue between business and civil society. And so then I joined the Institute because I thought actually to have a kind of big impact, there needs to be a new rethink about politics and radical difference it can make to people's lives, but not from a kind of populist perspective, either on the left or the right.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Please, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Max, please. Thank you.